Something shifted today. And for millions of Americans, it shifted quietly, swiftly, and without the kind of advance notice most individuals expected. A regulation that retirement specialists had been concerned about for months didn't just get discussed. It became active. Not next year, not after prolonged debate, today. And the consequence isn't theoretical, it's individual. It affects how your Social Security benefits are determined, how much you could receive every single month, and how much you could forfeit over the course of your retirement. What makes this moment so distinctive isn't just the policy itself, it's how rapidly it happened and how many individuals are only now understanding what it means. Because buried inside this update are changes that could decrease lifetime benefits by thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars, depending on when and how you file. And there's a deadline already approaching in the background that could determine whether you're affected or protected. The real question isn't just what shifted, it's why it shifted this way and whether there's still time to respond before the window closes. Hi, I'm Ivy, and in this video, I'm going to guide you through exactly what happened today, what the Social Security Administration changed, who it affects most, and most importantly, what you can still do about it right now. Because there's a lot of confusion surrounding this announcement and a lot of incomplete information circulating, especially for seniors and those approaching retirement. My goal here is simple: give you a clear, accurate breakdown in plain language so you can make informed decisions without the noise or the guesswork. And to really understand why today matters as much as it does, we need to go back just a little bit because the warning signs didn't start this morning. They started months ago when something unusual began happening behind the scenes. For months, something didn't feel right to the individuals who watch Social Security policy closest. Not the headlines, not the public statements, but the silence. Because under normal conditions, the Social Security Administration follows a rhythm. There are predictable updates, scheduled projections, routine communications that analysts, advocacy groups, and financial planners rely on to anticipate changes. It's not flashy, but it's consistent. And that consistency matters. It's how experts read between the lines. But this time, that rhythm broke. Expected updates didn't come. Familiar signals like early COLA projections, benefit adjustment discussions, and policy previews simply stopped. And when that kind of silence happens inside a system as structured as Social Security, it doesn't go unnoticed. Advocacy groups began asking questions. Financial analysts flagged the absence. Retirement planners started warning clients that something might be coming, but no one could say exactly what because the SSA wasn't saying anything at all. And historically, when the Social Security Administration goes quiet like that, it usually means one thing: a major change is being prepared behind closed doors. That's exactly what made this morning's announcement hit differently. It wasn't just another update or adjustment, it was a structural shift. Early today, the SSA released what they described as comprehensive benefit restructuring guidelines, and that language alone raised immediate concern among experts, because the Social Security system doesn't often change its core formula. In fact, the primary method used to calculate benefits, the framework that determines how your lifetime earnings translate into monthly payments, has remained largely untouched for decades. So when officials introduce changes at that level, it signals something deeper than routine maintenance. It suggests pressure, it suggests long-term concerns about sustainability, and it suggests that decisions are being made not just for today's retirees, but for the system's future as a whole. The problem is, this kind of structural change usually comes with extended public discussion, clear communication, and time for individuals to adjust. That didn't happen here. Instead, the update arrived quickly with limited explanation, leaving millions of Americans trying to figure out almost in real time what it means for their retirement. And as experts began digging into the details, one thing became immediately clear. This wasn't a minor tweak. This was a fundamental change to how benefits are calculated, and its impact could follow retirees for decades. To understand what actually changed, we need to break down the part of Social Security that most individuals never see. But that determines almost everything about what you receive. It's called the benefit formula. And at the center of that formula are what's known as bend points. Now, that term might sound technical, but the concept is straightforward. Bend points are simply thresholds that decide how much of your average monthly earnings count toward your final benefit, and at what percentage. Under the previous system, the formula worked in 3 tiers. You would receive 90% of the first portion of your earnings, 32% of the next portion, and 15% of anything above that. That structure was designed to favor lower and middle income earners, giving them a higher replacement rate relative to their income. But under the new 2026 regulation, those percentages have been reduced, not dramatically at first glance, but enough to matter over time. The first tier drops from 90% to 87%, the second from 32% to 29%, and the third from 15% to 13%. On paper, that might not seem like a major shift. A few percentage points doesn't sound alarming. But when those percentages are applied across decades of earnings and then stretched across 20 or 30 years of retirement, the difference compounds. What looks small today becomes significant over time. For many retirees, this could mean $40 to $75 less per month. And over a full retirement, that can add up to tens of thousands of dollars in reduced benefits. And here's the key detail. This change applies to new beneficiaries starting in 2026, specifically those who have not yet locked in their primary insurance amount. In other words, if you haven't filed yet, this change could directly affect you. And that's exactly why the reaction from financial experts today wasn't calm or routine. It was urgent. Across interviews, briefings, and advisory calls, analysts used words that you don't often hear in discussions about Social Security policy. They described the change as consequential. They called it poorly communicated. And perhaps most importantly, they emphasized that for many individuals, it may be difficult or impossible to reverse the impact once certain decisions are made, because Social Security isn't something you adjust casually. The moment you file, many of your options become fixed. Your benefit amount locks in. Your strategy becomes permanent, and that means timing suddenly matters more than ever. What experts were really warning about wasn't just the formula itself, it was the risk of individuals making decisions without fully understanding what changed, because policy shifts like this don't affect everyone equally. They affect the uninformed the most, the individuals who assume nothing has changed, the individuals who don't realize there's now a deadline quietly approaching in the background. But this time, something different happened. Instead of confusion turning into inaction, it triggered a response. And that response started almost immediately. If this breakdown is helping you make sense of what's happening, consider subscribing so you can stay updated as new developments unfold and get clear explanations without the confusion. Because what happened today is only the beginning, and what comes next may matter just as much. What happened next wasn't slow, and it wasn't scattered. It was immediate and highly coordinated. Within hours of the announcement, major advocacy groups moved into action. Organizations that represent millions of retirees didn't wait for extended analysis or delayed statements. They responded in real time. Alerts were sent out to massive member networks. Formal objections were filed through official channels. Petitions began circulating and gathered tens of thousands of signatures almost instantly. At the same time, financial advisors across the country started reaching out to clients directly, flagging the urgency of the situation, and in many cases, recommending immediate reviews of retirement plans. This kind of synchronized response is rare in retirement policy. It usually takes days, sometimes weeks, for a clear consensus to form. But this time, the reaction was unified almost from the start. And that tells you something important. It tells you that the concern wasn't about one small adjustment. It was about a pattern of changes that, taken together, could significantly alter how retirement benefits are calculated going forward. The shift wasn't being treated as technical. It was being treated as structural. And for many experts, that distinction changes everything. Because once you move beyond the headline change in the formula, you start to see that this wasn't just one update. It was a series of interconnected adjustments, all targeting key parts of how benefits are calculated and distributed. The first, as we covered, is the modification to the bend points themselves, reducing the percentages applied to your earnings across all 3 tiers. That alone changes the foundation of your monthly benefit. But the second change affects something equally important: your earnings limit. If you're working while receiving benefits before full retirement age under the updated regulation, that earnings threshold has increased slightly, which might sound like a positive change at first, but the penalty for exceeding that limit has also become more severe. Previously, for every $2 you earned above the limit, $1 would be withheld from your benefits. Now, it's $1 withheld for every $1.50 earned. That means working retirees could see more of their benefits reduced if they cross that threshold, even unintentionally. The third change targets spousal benefits, and this is where many retirement strategies begin to shift. In the past, couples had flexibility. One spouse could claim spousal benefits while delaying their own retirement benefit, allowing that personal benefit to grow over time. It was a strategy often referred to as claim and switch, and it helped maximize lifetime income for many households. Under the new regulation, that flexibility is gone. Filing is now coordinated, meaning if you claim one, you're effectively claiming both. That removes a key planning tool that many couples have relied on for years. And then there's the fourth change: survivor benefits. Previously, a surviving spouse could receive benefits based on what their partner was entitled to at full retirement age. Now, that calculation is tied to what the deceased spouse was actually receiving, especially if they claimed early at a reduced rate. That shift may sound subtle, but in practice, it can significantly reduce the financial security of surviving spouses over time. Individually, each of these changes might seem manageable, but together they reshape the structure of Social Security benefits in a very real way. They affect how much you receive, when you receive it, and how flexible your options are along the way. And that's why the response wasn't just strong, it was immediate. Because for many retirees and those approaching retirement, this isn't just a policy update, it's a change that directly affects decisions they're making right now. To really understand why this moment feels so significant, you have to zoom out and look at the actual financial impact, not just in percentages, but in real dollars over time. Because when experts started running the numbers, the results were hard to ignore. For many new beneficiaries, the updated formula could reduce monthly benefits by somewhere between 40 and 75. Now, on its own, that might not sound devastating, but Social Security isn't a short-term payment. It's a long-term foundation. Stretch that difference across 20 or 25 years of retirement, and suddenly you're looking at a loss of $12,000 to $22,000. In some cases, depending on earnings history and filing strategy, that number can climb even higher, closer to $50,000 over a lifetime. And this isn't affecting a small group of individuals. Right now, over 67 million Americans receive Social Security benefits. Every single day, roughly 10,000 more Americans turn 65 and move closer to making filing decisions that will define their retirement income. This is where the real weight of these changes starts to settle in, because what appears incremental at the policy level becomes substantial at the individual level. Small adjustments applied consistently over time reshape outcomes in ways that aren't immediately obvious but are very real. And that brings us to a question that more analysts began asking as the day unfolded. Why was this rolled out the way it was? Why the limited communication? Why the compressed timeline? Because according to several policy experts speaking under background, this may not have just been about updating the system. It may have been about testing something, specifically testing how aware and how responsive American retirees would be to gradual changes in their benefits. There's a term some analysts are using to describe this approach: strategic ambiguity. The idea is simple: introduce changes in a way that avoids immediate backlash, limit the level of public attention, and allow the policy to take effect before widespread opposition can organize. Historically, that approach has worked in certain areas of policy. But today, something didn't go according to that pattern. Instead of going unnoticed, the changes triggered immediate awareness. Advocacy groups mobilized. Financial experts spoke out. Retirees began asking questions fast. And that reaction may be one of the most important developments in this entire story because it challenges a core assumption that these kinds of changes would pass quietly. If you know someone approaching retirement who hasn't heard about this yet, now is the time to share this with them. Staying informed isn't optional anymore. It's essential, especially when the regulations are changing this quickly. So, what can you actually do right now? Because despite how sudden this change feels, there is still a window, small but very real, where your decisions can make a meaningful difference. And it centers around one critical detail that was included in the announcement but hasn't been fully understood by everyone yet: the grandfather clause. Under the current guidance, if you file for Social Security benefits before December 31st, 2025, you may be able to lock in the existing formula, the one with the higher percentage calculations. That means your benefit would be based on the older structure, not the reduced one taking effect in 2026. But here's where it gets complicated. Filing early isn't automatically the right move for everyone. Social Security decisions are deeply personal and depend on multiple factors: your health, your financial situation, whether you're still working, whether you're married, and what other sources of retirement income you have. That's why experts are emphasizing something very specific tonight. Don't rush, but don't ignore this either. This is a moment for recalculation, not reaction. The most consistent advice coming from retirement professionals right now is practical and actionable. First, access your Social Security statement through the official website and review your earnings record carefully. That's the foundation of everything. Second, use available calculators or work with an advisor to compare what your benefits would look like under the current formula versus the new one. Third, if you're part of a couple, revisit your strategy together, because the changes to spousal benefits could significantly alter your long-term outcome. And fourth, if you're within that 62 to 70 age window where filing decisions are on the table, consider running multiple scenarios before making a choice. Because once you file, most of those choices become permanent. This isn't about acting fast. It's about acting informed. And the reality is, the decisions made over the next several months could shape your retirement income for decades. But to fully understand why these changes are happening now and why they were implemented with this level of urgency, you have to look at the bigger picture surrounding Social Security itself. Because behind all of this is a system under increasing pressure. The Social Security Trust Fund currently holds trillions in reserves, but it's also paying out more than it brings in each year. That imbalance has been building for a long time, and projections have consistently pointed to a critical point around 2034. That's the year when, if no major changes are made, the system may only be able to pay about 77% of scheduled benefits. Not zero, but significantly reduced from what retirees expect. And that looming deadline has created a difficult situation for policymakers. Some argue for raising taxes on higher earners. Others push for gradual benefit reductions. Some want a combination of both spread out over time. But no option is politically simple, and no option avoids trade-offs. So when the Social Security Administration makes a move like this, adjusting the benefit formula without extended public debate, it often signals something important. It suggests that the pressure isn't theoretical anymore. It's immediate. It suggests that officials are trying to extend the life of the system using tools that don't require direct congressional approval. And it suggests that what we're seeing today may not be the final change, but part of a broader series of adjustments still to come, which makes understanding this moment even more important. Because it's not just about one regulation change, it's about the direction the entire system may be heading. And if you thought this shift was limited to Social Security alone, that's where the picture becomes even more complex. Because alongside these benefit formula changes, several related adjustments were introduced at nearly the same time, changes that when viewed together suggest something much broader is happening across the retirement landscape. Medicare Part B premiums, for example, have increased by 8.7% heading into 2026. That's not a minor adjustment, especially for retirees living on fixed incomes where every dollar matters. At the same time, changes to Medicare Part D are affecting prescription drug coverage thresholds, including shifts in the so-called coverage gap. For higher-income retirees, IRMAA surcharge brackets have tightened, meaning more individuals may find themselves paying increased premiums based on income thresholds that haven't kept pace with inflation in the same way. Individually, each of these changes can be explained. Premiums adjust, thresholds shift, programs evolve. But when they all move at once and in the same direction, it starts to look less like coincidence and more like coordination. Because what you're seeing isn't just a single policy update, it's a broader recalibration of how retirement benefits are structured, distributed, and sustained over time. And for retirees, that creates a very specific kind of pressure. Not just financial pressure, but planning pressure. Because the strategies that worked 5 years ago or even 2 years ago may not work the same way going forward. The margin for error becomes smaller. The cost of being uninformed becomes higher. And that's exactly why the response from Americans today has been so notable. It hasn't been passive. It hasn't been delayed. Across the country, individuals are already taking action. Retirement plans are being revisited. Financial advisors are fielding urgent calls. Filing timelines are being reconsidered. Estate plans are being adjusted, especially in light of the changes to survivor benefits. Even tax strategies that were set in motion months ago are now being reevaluated to account for shifting income projections in retirement. This isn't theoretical, it's happening in real time. What stands out most is the level of engagement. Because for years, there's been a narrative that retirement policy changes happen quietly, that most individuals don't notice until it's too late, and that complex systems like Social Security are too difficult for the average person to track. But today challenges that assumption. Today shows something different, that when the stakes are clear, individuals pay attention. They ask questions, they seek out information, and they make adjustments not perfectly, not instantly, but actively. And that shift from passive to engaged may end up being one of the most important parts of this entire story. So where does this go from here? Because despite how definitive today's announcement may sound, the story isn't settled, not even close. Right now, multiple congressional offices are actively monitoring the public response. Early reports suggest that phone lines have been overwhelmed, inboxes are filling up, and constituent feedback is coming in faster than expected. And that matters because Social Security has always been one of the most politically sensitive programs in the country. When voters respond in large numbers, especially retirees, that response tends to get attention quickly. The question now is whether that attention turns into action. There are already discussions behind the scenes about whether the implementation timeline could be adjusted, whether certain provisions could be revisited, or whether additional guidance will be issued to clarify the changes more transparently. None of that is guaranteed, but it's being watched closely. At the same time, something else is happening that's just as important. The Social Security Administration has gone quiet again, and just like before, that silence is being interpreted carefully. Because silence in moments like this doesn't usually mean inactivity. It means evaluation. It means internal discussions. It means officials are watching how this rollout is being received, how quickly information is spreading, and how strongly individuals are reacting. And depending on what they see, that could shape what happens next. This could remain exactly as it is, becoming the new baseline for future retirees. Or it could become the starting point for further adjustments, either to expand on these changes or to modify them under public pressure. That uncertainty is still very much in play. But here's what is certain. The 2026 regulation change is real. It's in effect. And for millions of Americans, it has already changed the way retirement benefits will be calculated going forward. What hasn't been decided yet is how individuals respond to it. And that part is still entirely within your control. The next 60 days, the next few months, even the decisions made before the end of 2025, those are the moments that will define how this change affects you personally. Not everyone will be impacted in the same way, but everyone approaching retirement now has something important to consider. And maybe the biggest shift happening today isn't just inside the Social Security system, it's in how individuals are reacting to it. Because instead of ignoring the change, individuals are engaging with it. They're asking better questions. They're seeking better information. They're taking a more active role in decisions that used to feel distant or automatic. And that changes the dynamic entirely. It sends a message not just to policymakers, but to anyone involved in shaping retirement policy that these decisions are being watched, understood, and responded to in real time. This story isn't over. There will be updates. There will be clarifications. There may even be adjustments as the response continues to build. But as of today, one thing is clear. The regulations have changed, the timeline is already moving, and the decisions made from this point forward will carry long-term consequences. We'll continue following every development closely, breaking it down clearly, and helping you stay informed as this unfolds. Because in moments like this, information isn't just helpful, it's essential.